All right. So you might remember when Donald Trump said he prefers soldiers that didn't get captured regarding John McCain. Everyone thought it was over for him, but he just kept doubling and tripling down on it. That's what they're going to do here. It does not matter uh, how many people raise the constitutional issues, including, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out in the last segment, extremely conservative judges. They're trying to spin the Supreme Court decision as 9-0 in their favor. No, no. It is 9-0 against their contention that they don't have an obligation to return this person. The hesitation is whether the Constitution provides for the courts to force them to do that, given that now it involves a third party country. But the principle they were completely united on. Um, so they have to distract by exploiting a poor woman who lost her daughter. So here's Carolyn Levitt talking about that the night before she brought her out on a stage.
Media outrage over the deportation of Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland, has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin. And if you didn't see yesterday, a Maryland jury found illegal alien Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez guilty of murdering Rachel Morin in August of 2023. She was a 37-year-old mother of 5 who was jogging in an otherwise safe community northeast of Baltimore when this monster ambushed, strangled, and beat her to death before stuffing her brutalized body in a tunnel drain. The Morin family finally got justice yesterday, but they will never get Rachel back. Our hearts go out to Rachel's family, her 5 children, and her mother, Patty, who has suffered the unimaginable loss of her daughter.
Okay, now I just have to mention. Notice she says the emotional manipulation of this is incredible. She says right there, yes, this woman, Rachel Morin, was killed. The monster that she's referring to is a different person from Abrego Garcia. It's
Doesn't
a different person. She just, well, she says those one after another to link in the public mind Abrego Garcia to this murder, even though he did not do it. The man who did it was convicted. He was just convicted. So you had a trial, you had evidence, and you had a conviction. Right? That's the difference between this case and the Abrego Garcia case. But the trick of lumping them together is the same trick that George Bush pulled after 9/11, where they never came out and said Saddam knocked down the World Trade Center. But they mentioned Saddam and Al-Qaeda side by side enough to, by the time they invaded the Iraq, the majority of Americans thought that he did.
Yeah. Also, we talked about this a little on RBN last night. They don't really care about talking to anyone other than their base. And when you look at the things they say, there's literally nothing that Carolyn Levitt could say at that mic that they would not repeat. Absolutely nothing. These points of constitutional law, they don't care. They don't care. What do you think? Most Nazis were smart? Those are not smart people. Those are always people who feel disenfranchised in some way, socially, economically. They feel isolated. They feel displaced. And for them, just joining a cult, that's enough. And what are the rules of a cult? You don't contradict the doctrines. You don't contradict the doctrines. Whatever the leaders tell you, you're going to repeat. All they have to do is give them some very emotional stuff that they can point to make an argument that has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation, and they're very good at it. They're flooding the zone. Oh, Chris Van Hollen goes down there. He wants to talk about constitutional issues. You know what? We're going to grab a grieving mother and exploit her grief for political advantage. And all of the morons who think that we actually give a flying fuck about this mother or them or anybody else, and we're not just using these people as scapegoats to cover over the fact that we're dismantling what little remains of your economic prospects in this country, keeping you focused on these immigrants for as long as we can. These people are not going to question any of this. They're just going to repeat it. As I say this, I can see the comment section now. You know, every time we do one of these stories, man, it brings out a lot of people who are emotionally and mentally broken. And you know that within 6 months, 12 months at the most, they're going to find out they've been had, but it's going to be way too late. So the next day, she brings out this poor woman who's grieving for her daughter to horrifically exploit her pain.
And sad that Senator Van Hollen and the Democrats applauding his trip to El Salvador today are incapable of having any shred of common sense or empathy for their own constituents and our citizens. Nobody knows this more than the woman standing to my right, Patty Morin, whose beautiful daughter Rachel was brutally maimed and murdered at the hands of an illegal alien in August of 2023. Patty no longer has her daughter because of the failed Democrat Party's open border, and these are policies that President Trump is bringing an end to. Patty should not have to be here today, but she is, and we are grateful and we are honored for her willingness and her request to share her powerful story with the world. Thank you, Patty, for being here.
Okay, so this is some of what she said.
Why are we not protecting the American citizens? It's just common sense. Why are we not protecting our children? And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this. Thank you.
Okay, look, I just have to say, they don't have more right than you or your daughter or your grandchildren. I'm not trying to get into a tit for tat. This woman has endured a pain that I don't wish upon anybody. It's absolutely horrific and horrible what happened to her daughter and her entire family now. But this is the manipulation. This is the manipulation that immigrants have special privileges that Americans don't. That is the core grievance at the heart of this entire issue, which is why it is very, very powerful and very, very politically potent. Now, the putting her up on a stage as the Abrego Garcia case is going on is meant to link in the public mind what happened to this woman's daughter at the hands of someone who we know is guilty. And so we're all for punishing that person to the fullest extent of the law, deporting them, fine, whatever you want to do. But we're linking that to a guy who has not been accused, much less charged, of any such crime. That is what the Trump administration's motive is in bringing her on stage for this and talking directly about Chris Van Hollen, who went to El Salvador to try and retrieve a man who has not even been wrongfully accused, has not been accused of any violent crime. It's extremely manipulative. Extremely manipulative.
Well, of course, and the just carelessness with which they're treating this woman's trauma and grief for political purposes is just absolutely disgusting. They know that this case has absolutely nothing to do with Abrego Garcia, but they know that their target audience won't care. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. That's what this is all about. So at the end here, Ms. Levitt had a message for the reporters.
I want to say that as a mother and as an American citizen, the president and our entire team, and I hope people in this room are grateful for your willingness to come here and your request to share your daughter's story. And I think the country hears you loud and clear. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Patty or for me? No?
I have a question.
No? Anybody? Okay. We'll see you all later.
It was either CNN or the AP.
Right.
Thank you for being here this morning. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Please, I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. Please tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Yes.
Tell how violent it really is. This is about protecting our children. It's more than just politics or votes or just anything. It's about national security, protecting Americans, protecting our children. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.
So look, I have no idea. I don't think anybody does what this woman's politics were before she suffered such a horrible loss. Obviously, she's in a position where she's very easy to emotionally manipulate. You've lost your child in this unimaginably horrible way. The literal president of the United States tells you that he really cares. Hey, and by the way, you want to come speak at this thing about what happened to you, because we can prevent this from happening to other people this way. To tar immigrants as being inherently, and that's what this is. I mean, it goes beyond Abrego Garcia. You're saying that immigrants inherently represent a greater danger when we know statistically they're less likely to commit crimes, which makes sense because you don't want to get picked up by the cops if you're an immigrant, right? It's like they did a study that if you actually do stop and frisk in white neighborhoods, you're more likely to find drugs. Makes sense because you're in a white neighborhood, you don't expect to get stopped and frisked.
Right.
You're in a black neighborhood, that's a possibility. You're going to be much more hesitant to walk around with drugs. So she did get she got an Oval Office meeting. Let's take a look at that real quick.
Beautiful.
Call a dear friend.
She's a beautiful woman. She's been through hell. She's been through hell, right?
Oh, yes.
Your daughter's looking down proud of you. You know that. Just keep it going.
I know.
Keep it going.
It's like you said.
Stay with that one.
It's like you said, we have a purpose.
It's a purpose. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
She's proud of you.
This reminded me of a story we did earlier this week. Donald Trump did a whole event in January in North Carolina where he set up a whole podium and had people come out to tell their stories. I wonder what those people would say in front of a microphone after this week. Trump denied North Carolina's request for FEMA relief from Hurricane Helene, calling it unwarranted. These people love you as long as they can use you for political advantage, and they could give a shit about you beyond that. And that's part of what's so horrible, seeing them doing this to this woman. They could give a damn about this woman. The fact that this verdict came down this week was a gift for them, given the news cycle, and they just jumped on the opportunity.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. And what makes it even more shameful is that what she's saying there, which is that we have to protect our children, she's speaking about an initiative and a policy that's overwhelmingly popular, which is apprehend violent criminals who are here illegally and deport them. Like the support for deporting violent criminals is overwhelming.
Sure.
Right? But you turn that policy, which is a popular policy, into something as horrible and as toxic as this by what? By abusing the policy, by not stopping there. And I This is why I oppose mass deportations from jump, because I guaranteed you, I told everybody here on the show, there's many clips of me saying this, I guaranteed it was not going to stop at violent criminals. I guaranteed you the innocent people were going to be mixed up in this, or potentially innocent people. Let's say they bring back Abrego Garcia and they prove their case in court. Let them do that. Let them do that. But it was so obvious that they were going to implement that policy of deporting violent criminals in bad faith and go after people who were not violent criminals. That even though there is massive public support behind the policy that she is advocating for, Rachel Morin's mother there, she's being manipulated into advocating for something much darker and much worse, which is rounding up people who didn't do anything and condemning them to a life of torture and imprisonment. That's what's especially shameful about it. And from the administration's perspective, obviously, where you saw Carolyn Leavitt blur the lines between the convicted murderer who killed this poor woman's daughter and Abrego Garcia, who has not been accused, much less indicted or convicted of anything, it doesn't matter to them whether you're guilty or not guilty. I got into this on RBN last night. It really doesn't matter to them whether these immigrants are here legally or illegally. On Inauguration Day, there was a video that went viral of that woman crying because she was in line for her immigration appointment. I believe she was an asylum seeker. She had an asylum appointment booked through that app. And upon his inauguration, the app was shut down and she was turned away. Right? So that was a person who was coming legally through a port of entry to seek asylum status, going through the legal process, and she was turned away. Therefore, it does not matter to these people whether you're violent, nonviolent, legal, or illegal. They are using immigrants as the scapegoat they need to build a police state. Immigrants are the scapegoat they need to build a police state. You cannot garner popular support for a police state because no one really wants to live in a police state. You have to force people into that bargain by saying we need the police state to protect you from this, or this group. And that group changes with the times. In the Bush years, the group was the Muslim terrorist. In the Biden years, the group was the white nationalist January 6th. Well, in the Trump too, it's the illegal immigrant gang member. They are the scapegoat that you need. It has nothing to do with people coming illegally, legally, violent, nonviolent. They don't even really care about immigration. They just need a group that they can turn the public against so that they can manufacture consent for an authoritarian police state. That is where their motivation begins and ends.
Look at the gay barber. He crossed the border for an immigration appointment. What's your logic in arresting the guy who you scheduled for an appointment? You know, Benjamin Franklin said it 200 years ago. He who would give up a little liberty for a little security deserves neither and will lose both. And that's exactly where we are.
Please clap.